I decided to mess around with autocrafters. To do this, I had to install a mod, and I will leave it linked below. It's a little more technical than most mods to install, but they have a good step-by-step in the description if you want to give it a go. But back to the task at hand, this swath of redstone soup behind me makes observers. Don't worry, we're going to clean it up and make it more efficient. However, the first step to making a new redstone contraption is getting it to work. Now, while I was looking at making it more efficient, I realized it would probably make a good noob to pro redstone video, as I can take you through how to put everything together in a practical application. So let's get into it. First, we have the autocrafter itself, and all the hoppers feeding into it. In this case, cobblestone, redstone dust, and quartz, but that could change depending on what you're trying to accomplish. We take a comparator output from the crafter and run it through an inverter. That means that once the crafter has even one item in it, the trigger signal shuts off. Right now we have this repeater locked, and that's just the off switch. The trigger signal feeds into the pulse shortener, which then feeds into the pulse extender. Editor Grim here. Listening to that sentence back, I realize some of you may be confused as to why I have a pulse shortener followed immediately by a pulse extender. The answer to that question is control. The pulse extender controls how long the hopper that feeds into the crafter is unlocked for. That means it has to be exactly the right pulse length. Also, if I left the trigger signal on until the first item fed into the crafter, I wouldn't be able to shut it off fast enough to stop it at the right time. The pulse extender feeds two lines. The first one, which powers this block and shuts the torch off, that unlocks the hopper and allows exactly 3 cobblestone to flow into the crafter. The second one is this repeater, which toggles the second phase redstone torch off. That primes the second phase line to trigger after the pulse extender shuts off. That means the redstone dust won't start flowing until the cobblestone is done. This is all accomplished with the use of the same pulse shortener used earlier. I told you guys in my redstone pulses video that this was my most used pulse shortener. From there we feed another pulse extender, which is deliberately set back further, as we only want 2 redstone dust. The distance shuts the end of the line off at the right time to stop the flow after 2 dust has moved into the crafter. The repeater feeds the quartz line, which only pulses its torch off for 1 tick, as we only want 1 nether quartz to drop into the crafter, so there's no need to run it through a pulse extender. The same inverter pulse shortener system then takes the signal once the quartz line shuts off, and shuts off the torch, allowing 3 more cobblestone to flow in at the end. Then we have the power line for the crafter. We use the block the trigger comparator feeds to feed the power line. Once 9 items are in the crafter gets powered and spits out an observer. That means the crafter now has no items in it, the torch turns back on, and the cycle repeats. Now this system works. I can't stress that enough, it does in fact work. There are, however, some drawbacks. First off, there isn't really room to put a system in to shut the circuit off if one of the chests runs out of items. That means, of course, the whole system is at risk of breaking if you ever let it run out of items. Also, it's kind of slow. Besides that, it's also messy. If none of that bothers you, then this would work no problem. However, I can do better, so let's start designing. First thing we need is the crafter and the hopper lines that's going to feed it, as well as the chest to store the items. So let's put that in. Here it is, literally the easiest part. Now we need to lock the hoppers and have a way to toggle the lock on and off, and I think we can use some observers and sticky pistons to pull that off. How this will work is the sticky pistons will push the observers so they are face to face. That will power the repeater to toggle on and off, and then we just need to control the timing so that it drops the required number of items. Now you notice that all the chests are right beside each other. That means that whatever we use to power the sticky pistons does need to be 1 wide tileable. Observers to the rescue. But we need to turn the sticky piston on twice. Once to push the observer down, and another to pull the observer back up. We should be able to accomplish this by using a note block. We power the note block. The observer below that will detect that. We'll power the piston to push the observer down. Then, we make an observer chain to feed into the observer directly above the sticky piston. Now the length of that observer chain is what's going to determine how many items drop out of the hopper to feed it into the crafter. I'm going to experiment here with the correct length for each item. I will see you when I have it all worked out. And here it is. I believe I have all the timings set correctly, but now I have another problem. I need to trigger those note blocks at the right time so the items flow in the correct order. Good thing this is crafting observers because once again, it's observer chains to the rescue. Now each of those will need to be a different length, so once again, let me figure out the timing and I will get back to explain. Okay, so what's going on here? The observer is detecting when the note block is played, Then we run it through an observer chain to power the block beside the next note block. The reason these lines all need to be different lengths is because we are detecting the signal at the time it pushes the observer down, so we need to delay starting the next note block until the item dropping chain has enough time to finish. Now all that's left is the control circuits, triggering the crafter, restarting the cycle, and the like. None of that should be too technical, so I'm just going to put it in and we'll be back to show it off and test both systems to compare. Now I did almost forget the most important part. We take a comparator outputs from the chest, run those through an inverter, and use that to shut the system off in the event that one of these chests runs out of items. The only other semi-tricky part is over here, where we take an observer output from the final chain's last observer and use that to trigger the crafter. The cycle then, of course, repeats. Now for the test. We're going to run both of these systems for 5 minutes and see how many observers get crafted by each system in that time. And the first system crafted 47, and the second system crafted 50. So I guess the first system wasn't as inefficient as I thought it was. However, the second system has room for emergency stop, is cleaner, and has a smaller footprint. All that at the cost of being more expensive. However, let's face it, if you have enough resources to use an auto crafter to make your observers, the observer cost to build this probably isn't going to matter. With that being said, thank you for watching this far into the video. Don't forget to hit that like button if you want to see more of this kind of content, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. And remember everyone, you don't get credit for all the mistakes you aren't making.